Hey there, sales players. Today's episode is brought to you by our amazing new sponsor, Lemlist. Whether you're closing deals or nurturing leads, Lemlist is your all-in-one platform for personalization outreach that converts. Picture this. You craft a killer email campaign in minutes using Lemlist's intuitive drag-and-drop editor. Want to stand out? Lemlist is here to help with advanced personalization that lets you dynamically insert custom images, videos, and even personalized landing pages based on your persona. With Lemlist Analytics, you'll know exactly who opened, clicked, and replied to your emails. Join thousands of sales professionals who trust Lemlist to supercharge their outreach efforts. Use the link in the show notes below and start your free trial today. Your personalized outreach just got a whole lot easier. Happy selling.
What's going on, sales players? It's Jesse here, and I want to introduce you to a genuinely cool product that we just learned about called Evie AI. It is a LinkedIn AI content assistant that was built to enhance your LinkedIn presence, increase your exposure and productivity as a seller. You can create personas, generate ideas, generate comments, craft posts, and 10x your LinkedIn presence. We actually had Joe, the founder, on the show, and he was kind enough to put together a special offer for sales players. There is a link in the show notes with more details. Go check out Evie AI. That's EVY AI. Welcome to Sales Players, the #1 podcast for top players in B2B sales.
Whether you're a seasoned pro or just starting out in the world of sales, this is the show for you.
We're all about bringing you fresh, actionable ideas to supercharge your rev gen game.
We dive deep into the mindset, habits, and tools used by top performers in the industry. Generate more leads, close more deals, and build wealth and financial security in B2B sales.
So if you're ready to level up, you've come to the right place. Join the conversation with other like-minded sales players and continue the discussion beyond the show.
Hit the subscribe button, tune into the sales players, and let's start winning together.
Chase, I'll kind of lead the discussion, but I definitely want your thoughts on this because, we're doing this in tandem. But one of the things we hear from people in the community and from people that are listening to the show is, hey, that's cool. You guys seem like you're starting to build somewhat of an online brand. For a while, that's kind of been kitschy and not something that I'm interested in doing. But now I'm starting to see that there's some real value in having an online brand, whether that's a personal brand. Or Amanda, you mentioned earlier, you might be doing this on behalf of your company as part of your role as kind of like a super rep is how do I start to help my company that I work for get more leads and get more clout online? And then a lot of the detractors in my network will say like, hey, Jesse, it's kind of silly. You're posting all this stuff on LinkedIn. Like what for? What are you even doing this for? And, it just makes you look like you're trying to sell something. And it's like, well, no, I don't want to do that either. Like I am trying to create, content that's thought leadership. But I thought it would be interesting to put together just a quick conversation, couple of slides here, nothing fancy, around sort of how Chase and I are thinking about this and how we've been able to turn, an audience on social media into some dollars. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that we're, about to buy a private island somewhere. We're not, driving Lambos around yet. We're, again, just normal sellers with day job.
I won't be driving a Lambo.
Chase isn't even going to drive a Lambo. Me neither. I'm more of like
Tesla, maybe, or some sort of EV.
Yeah. So yeah, how do you start creating a brand if you don't have one, or if maybe you have a small following on a social network? How do you then scale that brand and turn it into something that drives leads for you or drives interest in what you're selling in a way that's not sleazy? It doesn't come across as salesy. So yeah, any questions so far? Again, keeping this interactive, or any thoughts on that? And nobody's going to chime in because they don't want to be on the air.
I mean, I'll be honest. Like, I started a LinkedIn account back when I had my valet company because I just this is back in 2008, and I was just trying to connect with other business owners on there, and that was a way for me to get in touch with them. And it's set dormant for many years. And listening to your show, in the very beginning, I was like, hey, I got to get active on LinkedIn. That's how I'm going to get in front of X. And I think that not X, like X Twitter, but X business. So, you need to, I think figuring out like your LinkedIn is like, how do I want to present myself to the world? And also presenting yourself as you have some value to create.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to necessarily just be LinkedIn. I think X is like very underutilized depending on what you're selling. Like you can get very pinpointed on that.
Yeah, and I've got a couple of steps outlined here. That's a really good point. Is it doesn't have to be one platform, and I think a lot of sellers assume that has to be LinkedIn, but it could be X, it could be Discord, it could be Slack. There could be Slack channels. In Chase's case, I know he's landed a lot of business from joining these random Slack communities and finding people to connect with in there. So that's, I guess you could call that like a social media presence, but really it's more of like building connections on whatever platform makes the most sense. So, real quick quote from Gary V. Thought this was an interesting one. One of the things I've tried really hard to do, it took me a long time to do this, and it took me a long time to get comfortable doing this. Like, I think I've shared this story on the pod before, but I had the idea for the podcast maybe a year before I actually pushed play on anything. And I kind of regret that. I wish I would have just started somewhere. And I wish I would have infused more of me into the content in the early days. I think in the early episodes of the show, if you go back and listen, don't do that, please. You'll hear a guy who's probably trying to be too performative, because I was way overthinking like who was going to listen to it and if my boss was going to listen to it or if my grandma was going to listen to it. And you should really just be yourself and try to create authentic content and get started now. Don't wait. And again, this doesn't have to do just with podcasts. This can be LinkedIn, this can be Twitter, X, it can be making a YouTube channel or a TikTok channel. It's just start doing something. Get yourself on a routine and just start doing something today. Anything to add to that, Chase?
Just show up,
Show up.
make the ask.
Yeah. So question number one, ask yourself, like, where are my buyers? Chase already alluded to this. In a lot of cases, your buyers may not be on LinkedIn. My buyers for my day job are not necessarily on LinkedIn. Some of them are, but it's not a consensus, right? So that means I've got to go find them in the networks that they're in. And in many cases, my buyers are not even on social media networks. So I have to actually go in person and meet with them. But if you sell to like sellers or marketers, LinkedIn is probably your place. If you sell to technical folks, I would actually go X. If you sell to agency, entrepreneurs, small businesses, I think X is a huge opportunity, like Chase said, and you can grow really, really quickly there. I'm overlooking a bunch of platforms, but like if young people are your demographic,
Facebook.
yeah, Facebook's
Instagram,
great.
TikTok.
Insta, TikTok, YouTube is great for international. I feel like our show, as we've started putting it on YouTube, has reached more global listeners than it has in the past. So just throwing out some insights that we've learned over time, playing around with different social networks. Do you actually need to post? This is something Scott Leese actually said on an episode. I don't remember if it was the last one we did with him or the one before, but he said, if I were going back, and if you go look up Scott Leese, if you're not familiar with who he is, he's got probably 150 or 200,000 followers on social, and that's across like LinkedIn and X. And he's got a podcast and he hosts an event in Costa Rica. And so the guy has built like a pretty massive B2B brand property for himself. And by the way, I knew him a really long time ago because he cold called me when I first moved to Austin in 2012. He randomly cold called me to introduce himself. So he's been doing this for a really long time. This is not like, he's not a meteoric rise. He's someone who's been at this for a really long time. And he was cold calling just to make a connection because he saw I had moved to Austin and he lived in Austin. At the time, he was a VP of sales at a software company and was just trying to like build his groundswell of like potential people he could hire. And he tried to hire me at one point, back in around 2015 or 2016. But now he's got this massive property, this massive brand. And what he said on the show was most people don't even actually need to post, or they don't need to start posting. What they need to start doing, particularly on LinkedIn, is just to start connecting with people or following people and then inviting them to connect back. And you get like 200 of those a week. So if you just do your max every single week, by the end of the year, you're going to have a pretty significant amount of like first connections, right? And then those people will be followers. And then if you do start posting, your content will get a lot more traction that way. So I think the same goes for X. You don't necessarily have to start posting right off the bat. You could start going in and having, conversations in the comment sections of other people's posts. You could go start following people you're interested in learning from. and really just take it from there. Start there. Don't feel like you have to go. And I think one of the things that hangs a lot of people up, and this definitely was a thing for me, was like, how do I come up with content every day or every other day or weekly to like put out there? And I just don't have enough. Like, I can't think of enough. Like, I get writer's block, right? And so, and if you're not consistent, then you get penalized by the algorithms. And those are the kind of worries you might have. So don't even think about that stuff now. Just start by going and having conversations. I think Chase did this really well too. I've seen like you've joined in on a lot of conversations on LinkedIn or on X or elsewhere versus like worrying too much about posting. But you're posting now though, but you don't have to.
I'm pretty horrible at writing. I'm not a great writer. That's probably one of my worst, I don't know. It's one of my weaknesses. I need to work on that. I'm probably going to take Dickie Bush's, course on, Ship 30 for 30. That's another, guest that we want to have on the show is Dickie Bush. Um, but yeah, I think that, going in the comments and like actually having a thoughtful comment is very approachable. Like if somebody so the people that are writing content, they're putting a lot of effort into it. So he was putting so much effort into this podcast. And so all I had to do is actually listen to the podcast, have a thoughtful comment, go to him and say, man, I listened to this episode and this made, I heard you talk about this. And then I thought about that. Did you think about this? And it's just, that's how you can open up some of these conversations. Very simple.
Yeah. Yeah. Don't stress about posting. But if you do want to post, there's a bunch of people that talk about this in more depth, like Dickie Bush. Justin Welch is someone whose course I took, which is how to help bottle up some of your knowledge and like topics you're interested in talking about and turn those into something that's formulaic. One of the secrets to social that I've learned that I didn't know before was most big creators like Scott Leese or Justin Welch or Dickie Bush or anybody out there who's posting a bunch on social media, they tend to recycle their content. It's the same post. They might reword them a little bit, but nobody's coming up with some novel post every time they post. Usually they've got it on a machine that's like, hey, 6 months ago I posted about, and this is a real example for me. 6 months ago I posted about how more hiring managers should hire musicians versus athletes in sales roles. I need to repost that because that was one of my most successful posts of all time. And so it's been 6 months. People already forgot that I said that in January or February, whenever it was. It's probably been more than 6 months. So repurposing content, the other tip that I learned from that was share things that you're talking about every day. If you have a good client call, try to summarize that and share that on social media.
Mm-hmm.
And I do this all the time. Like someone will call and ask for advice, even if it's like a friend or a peer in the industry. And then I'll kind of boil that conversation down and say, hey, based what I learned from this conversation from talking to this person was this, and people want to hear that stuff. I kind of jumped ahead here, but that's like falls into the creating great content. Like talk about things that are actually relevant to you, that are authentic. Chase calls it building in public, like actually get out and talk about what you're doing every single day. It's an easy way if you are going to post to post things that are relevant and that resonate, is just being authentic and posting about what your day-to-day looks like, learnings, and then recycling stuff as well. I'll share really quickly too. We have a sponsor on the show, EviAI. If you're really like not wanting to start posting or writing, he's built this widget that uses GPT to actually go and comment on things on LinkedIn for you. And you get to have like the creative rights over it. Like you have the editorial rights on that, but it makes it really quickly if you want to go down your feed on LinkedIn and actually comment on a bunch of posts, or if you want to go on X and comment on a bunch of posts, it makes it really easy to do that. So I'll drop the link in the Slack for EviAI if you guys want to check it out. Pretty cool product. We had Joe on the show a while back. He's the founder. And it's just a way to scale. And this could be great, like if you're trying to promote a brand like Liquid Rails, then you could use this to comment on a bunch of things using AI and still have the creative and editorial control over everything. I know we're coming up on time, so I'm going to jam through some of these. Format and cadence. This is for the individual to decide on their own. I think a lot of the content creators try to have some kind of consistency in terms of like when they dedicate time to social. And again, dedicating time to social might just mean I spend 15 minutes this morning commenting on other people's X posts or LinkedIn posts, or sharing things, or, being a curator and like resharing someone else's content, or sitting down and writing something. One thing I found really works for me is if I get done with a workout, that's when my best content happens. So I'll usually go exercise, and then right afterwards, I've kind of made it a routine to post, because I'm usually like the most clear-headed right after a workout. It's seriously the best, I'm most creative when that happens. So find whatever that thing is for you. Maybe it's working out, maybe it's right after you had that first coffee, maybe it's after a really awesome client meeting. You just start to build that like cadence and that habit of posting. Format just means, are you a decent writer? Are you better on video? Maybe TikTok's your platform. I started with podcasting because I like to talk. I didn't necessarily like having my face on camera, and I wasn't quite confident in my writing when I started. I'm getting better at that, but I thought like I could talk for hours about things without my face showing. Podcasting is the perfect medium for me to start putting content out to promote something. So just be thoughtful about that. And yeah, Chase, anything to add?
It's all good, man. You got to just try one thing. Just get out there and just get dirty, you know?
Yeah. So next thing is turning impressions into conversions. This is when you're playing the long game. A lot of people think impressions are like a bullshit vanity metric, and they probably are. I, do look at my impressions more just because I'm curious, like how far my content's going, but I'm not like tied to that as a like end all be all KPI. Honestly, the KPI that I think Chase and I care about most is like ultimately cash coming back to sales players in some form or fashion. Chase hinted at affiliate programs, or he didn't hint, you talked about affiliate programs earlier. And this is something we should probably do another lecture on, and possibly a course on, because it's a really cool way to promote things and use your audience to actually sell other people's software and get commissioned on it. In some cases you get a better commission selling someone's third party affiliate software than you would if you actually worked for that company as a rep. So it's this huge like unknown thing where you can make some side money as long as it's, permitted within like your work agreement and things like that with your employer. And yeah, we should definitely talk more about this, but that's one way you can monetize, an audience. In 2022, I put my coaching offer out there, and that was because I had so many people reaching out on LinkedIn saying, "Hey, I listened to your show. You talked about this on an episode. Can I get 30 minutes with you to pick your brain?" And at first I was like, "Yeah, sure, let's do it." And then my calendar just started filling up with like pick your brain calls. And I still have a day job. I still have a family. I have a bunch of other stuff going on. And so I was like, I've got to find a way to kind of put a paywall in front of this. And so I just used Calendly and put a, paywall, and said, hey, if you want to pick my brain, that's fine. I do charge for that, just to justify the time. And this is how I support the podcast. So finding ways to kind of structure that sort of thing is very easy to do with the tools that are available out there. Anything to add, Mr. Chase?
Nope.
And so this is another important aspect, is like we really, the way we think about our listeners and our Slack community and our email subscribers and things like that is not just as like we're building a list or we're trying to build some numbers so we can sell more advertising. We do sell advertising because we do that to power the show, but we really are trying to build meaningful connections with all of our listeners and building a community and a movement. And so also think about that when you're going and creating content, is like, how can you start to build a movement around what you're talking about? And again, that can be for yourself and your own brand. If you're wanting to get more leads for your company, you can also just think about how do you rally your ICP into some kind of group, and then make that into a community versus just an audience. There's a big difference between audience and community, and we're community first. We really care about the people that are behind the numbers. The numbers come second. And believe it or not, that's actually been our pitch to advertisers is, you probably care about CPMs and conversions and all these numbers. We aren't necessarily focused on that. We're focused on building a movement and meaningful connections with our audience. And so if that's a problem, then maybe we're not a good sponsorship partner, right? So yeah, be thinking about that, and, really try to connect and give time, pay it forward with people that are following you and that reach out. And then I think this is the last one, like how to scale. And this is a big question, and one that I could probably talk about for like another half hour. I won't, but you have to get the fundamentals down first. You have to get your cadence and your routine down. You have to start to think about what content is most valuable for people you're listening to, who you're trying to reach, what platform you're trying to reach them on. And I think once you've started to define those things, you can start to create, and again, creating in the early days might just be commenting on other people's things or sharing other people's content. But then once it's your own content, you can really start to systematize it, repurpose it. You start to get, new ideas for things, but just, build yourself a routine where when you're the most creative, that's when you're going to go and create the content that you're going to post on social. So I think that's it. Q&A here. I know we're like right at time. And Chase, obviously, if you have anything else to add, but we're here as a resource to help on this stuff too.
I always try to think whenever I'm posting, like, how am I creating value for somebody? And if I'm in a meeting with somebody, even if it's a job, like, how are you going to create value for that person? If you didn't get the job, it's like, hey, well, here's a prospecting list I just built for you, and these are the people that I want to go after. Um, and I think like even customers, it's like, what type of trouble are you running into, and really like creating those relationships. But I know we're right at time.
Thoughts, questions? Anyone?
Well, go ahead, Derek.
Oh, no, you go ahead a minute.
Okay, thank you. I was going to say, you keep saying we're right at time, so I don't want to push us over. I have a few more minutes, but
I do too. So yeah.
I wanted to get your opinion about posting from a company profile or kind of your brand's profile versus posting for yourself, because I'm sitting in between this sales and marketing space where as a seller, I want to post as myself, show my own personality, get people to connect with me as a person. But then I'm also at the same time posting from all of our company channels and leading the company posts and trying to create content from those two different viewpoints. So do you think both are necessary? Do they both serve their own purpose? Like what are your thoughts there? Would you prioritize one?
Yeah. I'll take this one. Okay. Yeah. Chase has to hop. Yeah, I can take this one. So personally, and we're not off the record, we're on record here. I'm going to say prioritize yours, because yours is an asset that you're building. And whether you work at the company you work now, or, at some point in the future, that could still pay you dividends. So for me, my mindset is always like my priority, regardless of role, is to build my audience. If that benefits my current employer, awesome. If it helps me build pipeline in my current role, great. But that's my priority. Now, any extra time you have, if you've got access to like the brands page, doesn't hurt to have access to that stuff too. But I would put the focus on your personal brand for a few reasons. One, I already mentioned like the asset, you're building an asset for yourself that's going to pay itself dividends over the years. And, regardless of what you choose to do, whether you're working for a company or you start your own company, like that network's going to continue to pay you, or be an audience for you. Right. So that's one reason. The other reason is the younger generations tend to, I think, like creators more than brands. I think in the past, brands carried a lot of clout, right? It was brands we were focused on commercials, right? As Pepsi and Coca-Cola and General Motors, like these brands. But if you think about like who's really successful on TikTok or Reels or some of these platforms that younger viewers are on, it's individual people. Like it's individual creators that are like kind of regular looking people. And of course they have brand sponsorships and partnerships in many cases, but that they seem to have a lot of credibility that way. So I just think that also there's an element of like authenticity when it's you and not like, hey, I'm posting on behalf of my company sales players. We do also do that, but if you'll notice, like Chase and I tend to prioritize our voice and content, and then when we remember to, we'll go and share something from the sales players LinkedIn or X pages. We could probably get better at that, but the priority for us is always like our own personal brands. Hopefully that helps answer the question.
Yeah, it makes sense as a salesperson for sure.
Now, as a marketer, I understand that there's probably like a scope of work that you've got to do in the role where you are having to share. And so again, I think fulfill the scope of work, whatever that is, or define that. If you don't have that, go to your founder and say, or your leadership team and say, hey, what is the expectation? Is it a daily post from the company's handle? What platforms are we going to focus on? Is there, existing content I can already start to share? Can I repurpose something? Has the company done a podcast in the past? Have they done YouTube videos in the past that I can repurpose and drip out as content? But then I would really start to build, and one of the ways I've done this is like because I've had sales players now for 4 years, but I've also worked for companies for the last, since longer than that. And so I'll usually spend like a post to focus on like kind of growing the podcast. One that has nothing to do with anything. It's more like my random thoughts and feelings on something that just kind of humanizes me. And then I dedicate like one post a week to like plugging something that the company, my day job, is working on, right? Maybe we're going to a conference, or we put out a new feature on a product.
Okay, tell me if this sounds like you. You're a sales hunter with literally hundreds of target accounts in your territory and no idea who in your patch is even in the market for your solution. You've pulled all the reports, built all the lists, and you've done a bunch of account research, but you're still in the dark about where to find your low-hanging fruit. And look, you could waste another quarter smiling and dialing, grinding through a cold list, and blasting out emails, or you could do what I do and get Leadfeeder. Leadfeeder identifies the companies that visit your company's website and tracks on-site activity so you can see which leads from your region are ready to buy right now. Leadfeeder has customizable notifications, lead scoring, routing, and it works seamlessly with your CRM system. Right now, Sales Players has got the hookup on an extended 21-day free trial offer, so be sure to use the link in the show notes to sign up. Oh, and you should probably forward that link over to your ops team so they can get Leadfeeder set up for your whole team. Stop burning time and resources on leads that don't convert and sign up for Leadfeeder.
But I think it's working out for the situation that I'm in. I'm trying to build our own for Liquid Rails. We're trying to gain followers, but I have like a couple thousand LinkedIn followers myself. So I just kind of cross promote.
Yeah. I've been trying to figure out the right optimization. Like, do you have the company post and then you share it, or do you post and the company shares it, or, who's commenting on what? I have access to my company pages, so I'm liking their posts and I'm making them like all my posts, but I'm still trying to, trying to break into the LinkedIn algorithm a little bit.
Yeah, and I always say, if we sign a client or if I want to share something with somebody, I'll always add them because then it puts it on their feed, and LinkedIn's awesome like that. It's we've gotten so many inbounds just from, hey, I saw that you're working with such and such client or brand. We'd love to talk to you. So that LinkedIn's been great. We don't do really anything on Twitter or Instagram. I want to, I just don't have time.
Yeah, I don't know how much y'all heard. Sorry, I dropped off there. My Wi-Fi just crashed, but yeah, I'm trying to remember where we left off, but check out X, and it's kind of tough to break in, but you can grow really quickly on there. And then video is obviously like a really big opportunity for anyone who's courageous enough to take on video. That's been a hard one for me. We're trying, but yeah, it's not easy.
Yeah.
Hey, Jesse, hey, I'm sorry, Amanda. Keep interrupting. I'm very sorry. For X, is there any recommended groups that you would advise people to join in regards to trying to build up, kind of that identity in that space? Because X is something I'm familiar with, but I have devoted a lot of time to it, so I'm not sure how to, where I should be at as far as people to connect with and stuff.
I would just go maybe follow some of the same people you follow on LinkedIn to start. And then, open it up and just kind of scroll for a while. I should post in the Slack. There's a couple people I really like to follow on there. One of them is a guy named Daniel Vassallo, I think. And he left his like really awesome, lucrative engineering job at Amazon. And he just creates content now. And apparently he's like now matched his income from being an Amazon engineer. And so he grew a bunch on Twitter, and that's where X, whatever you want to call it. So it's more like following interesting people on there than joining a group. There's not as much like grouping. They do like these live podcasts, which is kind of interesting. Chase and I have talked about like, what if we did that kind of like in this format, but on a public forum. I'm a little hesitant, but yeah, there's not so much grouping there as much as just like go and follow some people you're interested in following. And then, start to think about how you could maybe write, if you wanted to, short form content. I guess like Derek, if I was in your spot, and this is what I did with X a few years ago, was I was selling to DevOps, and I knew that a lot of DevOps and CTO thought leaders are on X. And so I would just go follow my prospects on there. And then I got kind of lumped into this like sort of technorati ecosystem. And it was actually really interesting because I was able to stay up on a lot of the like CTO trends, which help me sell better to that demographic. So maybe just start there, like go look at who your prospects are and see if they happen to have an X handle, follow them, and then, kind of go from there. Meta threads, as a former Meta employee, they're fine. I think, it's a little harder to grow unless you spend money there is my assessment of like my time at Meta and interacting with Meta is like, and Instagram's fine, but I don't think business content is not as powerful on there. Threads is interesting, but I think more business people are on X and LinkedIn than anywhere else. And Derek, hopefully that answers your question, by the way.
Yeah, it does. Thank you. I appreciate that. I guess that's something that'll be my weekend to do right there. I was just kind of scroll and mess around on it. And I did, I think you dropped, but I used Evie AI and my impressions on LinkedIn went up like crazy.
Oh, cool. I didn't know you picked it up. That's awesome.
Yeah, I picked it up, using it both, for company and obviously for myself as well. But yeah, impressions went up like crazy, and that's awesome.
Yeah, that's cool to hear. It's, look, it does pay dividends. I think this is the other, like, if I could close off my presentation is like, it feels for so many years, it felt like I was just treading water with posting and stuff, but it really does start to pay off. It just takes so long to build a digital audience. And even now my numbers are not even, like I'm nobody compared to Gary V or, someone who's got a huge audience. Like my numbers are pretty small, but I don't think you need too many numbers to generate pipeline, for your product or for your company, and, start to think about some other ways to monetize that brand. And again, we'll have to do another full affiliate sales conversation because every seller should have some affiliates that they promote behind the scenes. And then I think every seller at some point could have a coaching program that they put out there and say, hey, I'm really good at this. If you want to learn how to do this better, here's my hourly rate, right? So those are a couple ways that you can kind of capture some of that audience and turn them into dollars. You can do so much more than just getting sponsors or partners, but that's the other crazy thing is this year, for the first time, I had someone reach out and say, we want to do a brand sponsorship with you, not the sales players, but with myself, and just from my LinkedIn posting. And honestly, I was so resistant for the longest time. I was like, I don't have the time. I don't have the like energy to post on LinkedIn often. I'm still kind of haphazard at it, honestly, but it does pay. It starts to pay dividends if you just get consistent with it. And if the content's really good and good is genuine stuff that you're working on that people will find interesting or helpful. And yeah, so good luck with everyone. And yeah, any other questions or anything else I can help with or suggestions I can make?
Thanks, Jesse.
Yeah. Thank you guys for joining. We will definitely do this again next month. And someday we're going to do this in person somewhere cool, maybe Costa Rica or something, but stay tuned for that.
Awesome. Thank you.
Everybody have a great day.
Thank
See
you.
y'all.
Thanks.